Hi, I'm Shona Adams and I'm a clinical psychologist working in Buckinghamshire in Milton Keynes, and today I presented some of the latest research on human givens therapy and rewind. I presented 16 studies which are in the process of being published, so not all of them have been published yet, and that included the results of 4,843 clients and 55 therapists, so a large proportion of information. Only one of those studies had overlapping information, and that provided follow-up to other studies and qualitative information. The rest of the studies did not overlap the data at all. What we found out was in the more recent studies, the scientific information has been of a much higher quality. We found that there's very high data capture rates, which means the number of people who start treatment, we had between 80 and 100% data capture, which means we know exactly what the results are, the outcomes of the therapy for that proportion of people. And for practice-based evidence, that is really significant because many studies, they don't know how effective the results of their therapy are for that number of people who start therapy. Today, I looked primarily at those who completed treatment, not those who just started treatment and perhaps didn't finish therapy. What we found out was that some of those who recovered, which means they're below the clinical cutoff on questionnaires, there's different cutoffs for different questionnaires, and that has an effect on the results. Basically, very conservatively, on the lower end of cutoff rates, we found we were getting between 46 and 57%, depending on the study, with an average of 51% of people below the clinical cutoff at the end of treatment. For the moderate cutoffs, which is slightly higher cutoffs, obviously the rates of recovery were much better, between 74 and 83%, with an average of 76%. Now remember, this is with a data capture rate of between 80 and 100% of people treated. Also, within human givens therapy, we tend not to have exclusion criteria. So, no matter what the comorbidity is, how chronic or serious, we tend to treat people, and we have very good results in not very many sessions. We also looked at those who had improved, in other words, those who'd been helped. So they'd either recovered or had reliable improvement. That is, for some of those questionnaires, there are statistics which show if they improve by a certain number of points, it means it's not due to chance. And what we found was between 83 and 96% of people were helped with the human givens therapy, with an average of 90% of people. One of the other things that we looked at in some of the studies, my argument is that if we introduce variance, that means introduce variety in if you have multiple therapists at multiple sites treating people, you can control for extraneous variables. In other words, if they are all producing similar results in effectiveness, which is similar to other studies, then it's not going to be due to random events that they have recovered. It must be due to the treatment. So in some of the studies we've seen, there were multiple therapists, for example, about 50 therapists over multiple sites, and what we see is consistently similar results happening, regardless of the therapist and the site. So again, just to summarize, I reported on 16 different studies. Some of them, the initial studies, had very poor data, but over 4,843 clients, 55 therapists altogether, showing similar results about the effectiveness of human givens therapy and the rewind. One of the studies that I've been personally involved in also showed between and within subject results. Now what that means is we treated everyone in session 2 of treatment. They either got the rewind or treatment as normal anxiety management. And then we saw the results, and those with rewind the average scores went almost down to normal on the core questionnaire, and that is in one treatment session. Then those same people who had the anxiety management who didn't drop significantly on their scores, they didn't improve. When they had the rewind in the next session, they too, on average, went down to within the near the clinical cutoff range. And what that between and within subjects particular study demonstrates, again, using practice-based evidence without RCTs, because they're very expensive and quite inaccessible to many therapists, that there are other ways of getting really good, reliable data that can show the effectiveness of treatment within psychological therapies.